On the federal level, when we think of bureaus, we think of things like FBI, CIA, things of that nature, and how complicated those bureaus can be. And among the most complicated happens to be one with another three-letter definition, the IRS. And I think the Congressman and I both agree that the tax code is extremely complicated. Being that he served on these committees, has been instrumental in pushing change that simplifies that tax code. And I think that's very commendable. And I'm not going to go on too much here, but I'd just like to turn over the floor to the Congressman.
Well, thanks, Mayor. I appreciate that. Well, thank you, Mayor. I appreciate it so much for hosting us today and the kind words and opening up the facility. And to the supervisor, thank you for joining us. This is local government coming together with federal government. And I know I think our state assemblymen and state senators are out and about.
Actually, we're just outside of their district.
I know we're just outside of their district, but the other ones too are out there and working hard. But we do these town halls all the time. We try to get out there, cover the district as much as possible. The district being 11 counties, it's a pretty large district, about the size of the state of New Jersey. And one of the things I've always believed, if you're going to represent people, you got to get up, talk with people, listen to people, and have the conversation. And we had 2 other town halls today. We started in Lansing, and we had about, let's say 200 people there, standing room only. So it was bright and early, standing room only crowd. And then we met up in Varick. Right? That's when we picked up this young gentleman over there who was keeping track of us for the campaign trail from Martha Height. Good to see you. But anyway, that's all part of the process. But now we're ending here today in Naples, and it's snowing, which is, I guess, appropriate given that this winter won't go away. But these meetings are meant to really be a conversation. So, maybe just a quick update from Washington as to what's going on recently. I was in Washington yesterday. Came home last night. I come home every weekend. My wife and kids live in Corning, so we drive back and forth. And got home late last night. Left early this morning. They're sound asleep. I'm going to say goodbye, but get a chance to see them tonight. Autumn's got her semi-formal tonight, so we're going to try to get back to see her off on. But this past week down in Washington, we took care. Well, we worked on a bill in the House that we're going to have to take care of an issue dealing with how our doctors are paid under Medicare. Right now, if we don't get it taken care of by the end of the month, they're looking at a 24% cut in their reimbursement under Medicare. We need to make sure that doesn't happen. And so we had a bill out on the floor that we actually voted on. The real fundamental dispute that's left, and this is where I'm always the eternal optimist. I think there's an opportunity here because we really have come together on the policy of taking care of what they call the doc fix, the SGR, this cliff, if you would, that the providers under Medicare are facing with this 24% cut in provider reimbursement rates. The policy of how we would fix that permanently, since went to Washington, D.C., never really was able to come together. There was always a big fight there. But we've been able to come together, I think, and put a bill together on the policy to get it fixed permanently. But the big issue that we're having with the Senate on it is they don't want to pay for it. We do. And so the question is how do you come up with that $138 billion is what we're talking about for this fix to pay for that permanent solution. So we had a bill up this past week on the House, and you may have read about it yesterday. It was we put a pay-for up that was the individual mandate delay of the Affordable Care Act to match it up with the employer mandate delay that is there. A little bit longer than the employer mandate, but to get the map to work, there was a 5-year delay of the individual mandate. Senate hasn't taken up any pay-fors, and they said that we shouldn't pay for it. So that's a difference of an opinion as to how we go forward, but we'll see how that gets to the finish line, because again, it has to be taken care of by the end of the month. Other things that are going on, obviously you may be going a little to the foreign affairs side, Ukraine. There's a vote coming up tomorrow. Just reading some reports as we were coming over from Varick. Some very troublesome signs coming out of Ukraine in the last 12 hours or so. Some Russian, God bless you.
Thank you.
Some Russian troop movements and things that are occurring there, the Crimea region, and then outside the Crimea region that we're going to have to keep a close eye on. and see how this goes down. Now, I have not been supportive, nor will I be supportive of putting boots on the ground, military intervention, anything like that in regards to Ukraine. But one of the things that's occurring here is that we got to really figure out a way we're going to have to deal with Putin. Putin, to me, is exhibiting some behavior that's very aggressive, and there doesn't seem to be a consistent foreign policy coming out of the U.S., and I defer to the White House tremendously on these issues. A consistent, firm, strong position when it comes to foreign policy. And I think that's what Putin's taking advantage of at the present time, and we just got to keep a real close eye on it, because our allies in the region, in Eastern Europe in particular, are very troubled by what they're seeing coming out of America today. So we got some work ahead of us on that front. So let's see what happens, and we should see how that unfolds here very shortly. But I hate to say it, but my personal opinion, I think you're going to see a split Ukraine. I think you're going to see a Crimea, maybe the eastern portion, break off, and you're going to have two. And then we're going to have to see how far this goes and see if it is something that is contained to that area or it continues to grow. And that's the problem. So anyway, there's a little update from Washington. And we did get the farm bill done, just so everyone's aware of that. We got the 5-year bill done, signed into law. That's good. I am very concerned about the grapes crops. We've been working with the senator's office, making sure that as we get through this winter, it's been a long winter, obviously, we'll make sure that the grape growers are aware, and they are aware of the work that we're looking to try to do if they need potential help in regards to the damage that's been done this winter. So put that on your horizon if you know anybody in the industry. Just please tell them to give us a call and see what we can do. All right?
So we have a sign sheet circulating around, and love to get everybody signed in so we can get back in touch with folks. And also there's a clipboard with written questions circulating. But with a smaller group, we do the written questions more so people can be comfortable if they want to do it in a written fashion, and so we have a record of things.
We're out of time. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Oh, my name's Joe. How you doing?
Joe runs all the district offices. You may see Joe around town. He's kind of the face, if you would. We have district offices in Corning, Jamestown, Geneva, as well as satellite office in Ithaca. We also do some time in Owego and Olean. So we try to cover the district, and by all means, if you want to stop in, more than welcome to. If not, reach out to us, read.house.gov. Probably one of the best ways through the emails, but always give us a call. And Joe runs all that.
Yeah. And again, thanks to the mayor for opening up the door for us. Appreciate it. And with that, I guess we open up to the floor. If anybody has any.
Do we have any written questions to start with, or just?
I know I saw some folks writing, but they haven't come.
You're still doing it back there?
Hi.
Okay.
Hi. Brenda Shuey. I live on Blueberry Hill, halfway between Naples and Honeoye. I've always been a firm believer that the person in charge, the CEO, is the one who sets the pace. And in the case of the United States, that would be President Obama. And I've heard a lot of debates about how he handles foreign policy and the lengthy conversations that he's had with Putin that a lot of people would say are unnecessary and are not effective or do not express a real strong leadership quality. How do we, as just average citizens, encourage him to be a stronger, a stronger leader?
Well, I appreciate that. How best, I think, is to express as much. I mean, I do notice that the more people speak up, the more attention we seem to get out of this White House. So that's very important. So anything you can do on that front. Be engaged. Coming to town halls like this today are important because we'll carry that message back. And the more we can do that, the better off we are. But at the end of the day, to point out the White House, it's kind of his call. His call as to how he wants to conduct himself and what he's going to do. I have tried to reach out to the White House numerous times. I've written 10 letters, personal letters, on top of other letters to the White House. Haven't received a response, to be perfectly honest with you. That's very troublesome, very frustrating. And I'm not saying that also in the sense that that's only me. I have colleagues, friends on the other side of the aisle that's occurred to. So that's a problem, in my opinion. If your own guys on your own team aren't getting responses to, that's an issue that needs to be dealt with. Now, we are working with the White House on some work right now, though, that maybe is an opportunity for me maybe to share some information back. I mean, we have been to meetings with the White House. We've been at different events. You saw the president come up, had lunch with the Republicans conference, had some discussions. So there are moments where we cross paths, so to speak. But we are doing some stuff on a manufacturing innovation bill. It's called Revitalize American Manufacturing Innovation Act, and it's about bringing public-private partnerships together to get products from the concept phase to the commercialized phase, and also utilizing business, universities, colleges, vocational schools to develop the workforce that's necessary to do the new advanced manufacturing. And where the president's kind of taken some initial steps on that is the 3D printing world. Just to give you some information, over in Ohio, he's got this national network of manufacturing innovation that they're doing over there for additive materials. So there are some opportunities where maybe we can express your frustration as we go forward. The president even referenced our bill that we have, that Revitalizing American Manufacturing Act. He was indirectly referenced it in the State of the Union. Talked about it down in North Carolina by name and gave us referenced our name, and Joe Kennedy, who's working with me in the House, and then Roy Blunt and Sherry Brown in the Senate. So that's something I put on your radar because that's something that we're really trying to push, but maybe there's an opportunity to deliver that back. But I can tell you, it's really his fundamental call at the end of the day. Yeah, sir.
I have to take issue with that. As you are aware, I'm a very traditional conservative in a patriotic position, and I advocate a strong America and not an empire. I want a republic. The State Department is behind this contrived interference in the Ukraine, along with George Soros. This has to be brought to the attention of people in Congress. My appeal is very simple. When you think that the executive branch has a carte blanche effort to create foreign policy, where the legislature has basically abdicated the war powers authority that is legitimately in your branch of government, we need to weaken the executive branch and strengthen the legislative initiatives. We're getting ourselves into a situation that could snowball out of control. I'm not a fan of Putin, but I'll give him one thing. He's a nationalist. We haven't had a nationalist president in this country since Ronald Reagan. And we're a little tired to have Congress just ignored and let the State Department, which is nothing more than the 21st century of the communists that were once in the Soviet Union, are now in foggy bottom. Now, how can we allow a contrived coup d'etat to create an excuse to bail out Obama over all his failures on the domestic side? We cannot let NATO dictate American foreign policy. Our interest is here on our own shores, not in Europe.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And that's where I'm not supporting, nor did I support in Syria or Libya military engagement and going in on those things. I did appreciate that the president did ultimately in Syria defer to Congress and was talking about coming to Congress. And then when you saw the action of Congress where we said, okay, now you're following the right procedures, no, don't go. When he was all set to go. That, to me, demonstrated the way it should be done. And that's where we're trying to exert more and more of that authority. But the question that I was hearing was, who responds for the United States in regards to these foreign crises, the position of the United States on these issues? And when we elect a commander-in-chief, to some degree, that voice carries a lot of weight. And I share the frustration, I share the concern that voice is not as strong as we need it to be. And consistent and firm. The words are spoken, but then the actions are contrary to the words, which causes an inconsistency that is causing a lot of people to be very, very, very concerned. I mean, I'll tell you, we've had some conversations with folks from the state of Israel, for example. You know, it used to be, no kidding, no doubt, we know you got our back, you're with us, we have our strong alliance, and there's national security interest to our relationship there that I can point to. I mean, you just look at the Suez Canal and the stabilizing effect the State of Israel has in the Middle Eastern region. And to me, that makes that relationship not only important from a friendship perspective, but from a national security perspective. And now, the word I'm getting back is, we're not so sure. And if we're not so sure, then our enemies are not so sure. And this is one of my fears. This is one of my sincere fears, is that folks who would sit around a table like this, making decisions saying, okay, if we did X, Y, Z, we know America will respond. Now they may say, well, we don't know if America's going to respond. I don't think they are. They go ahead and do X, Y, Z, then America does respond. And now we've escalated it, and a decision they otherwise would not have made, they make, and get us down a path that spirals out of control. And so I share the frustration that you're expressing, and what I'd offer is that we need that firm, consistent policy that is not only echoed from the White House, but follow the procedures and have Congress participate the way we saw in Syria.
I have a question.
Yeah, Steve.
The recent jobs bill, or the recent veterans bill that was in the Senate, wasn't in the House, was actually blocked by the GOP. And it had to do with an Iran sanctions addition to the bill for it.
Which one are you referring to?
This was just about a month ago.
It's probably Bernie Sanders' omnibus
Yep.
veterans bill.
Yep.
The Senate, they had an omnibus bill that ultimately didn't go through.
And it didn't go through because they made it look like, or a lot of people are making it look like it didn't go through because the Republicans are not behind our veterans. You know what I'm saying? And this is where the Democratic Party is really, I think, is dangerous, because all the way around, when you put something onto a bill, I mean, a bill should be a clean bill as far as I'm concerned, so that we can vote against it or vote or for it. And I fully understand why we put this, or why we want sanctions on Iran, but why do we have to let that stuff go onto a bill as something as important as a veterans benefits bill?
Well, I would agree that we try to work and put single issue bills out there, but the reality of DC is that doesn't happen 100% of the time. It's just the institutions have the ability to play that political game, and they use procedure, process. When I first got there, one of the lessons that I kind of was taught or was told about is there's 3 P's here, and it's process, politics, and policy. And then I'm trying to change that to make policy number 1, but you still got to respect the process and the politics, I guess. So I hear that, and well, I would agree that we shouldn't do that, but to say that it's not going to happen is something that we just got to deal with. And then you play politics, and the theater has to end. The theater has to end, and it's all about political one-upmanship and all that stuff. And you know, I just don't participate.
Got a great friend who, you know, he's anti-Republican all the way around. Everything in the world is a Republican's fault. And look at this, they voted against this veterans benefit bill, and so on and so on and so on. And it's ridiculous, because if it had been a clean bill, they would have voted the way that would have looked better for us.
Well, I mean, and I'll tell you, it's sometimes they're very difficult decisions. I mean, I don't have the luxury of not voting on a piece of legislation that's before us. And I'll give you one where I just recently did. Veterans, to me, just as a commercial. Doc, want to stand up, say hello to everybody? Doc Schmitz from our office, works out of the Corning office. All he does is veteran work. All he does. And that's because it's something that's very important to me. My dad, 20-year career military veteran, World War II and Korea veteran. And when Doc and I met each other, I said, all I want you to do is take care of the vets. And Doc is a vet himself and knows not only the talk of the talk, but walks the walk. So anybody who's got a veteran issue, let's go with that. But when we voted on the budget deal, for the 2-year budget deal that was out there, and it had to cut to the military retirees, into the retirees, it was tough. Because I looked at that and I said, ooh, you know, we shouldn't be doing this to our vets. But I had to pick the whole package. And I saw the benefits of getting the 2-year deal put together. I saw that we were going to have the stability of the 2-year program and get away from that government by crisis. We moved the ball down that right direction. And I made a promise to go back and take care of that. And ultimately we did. And we had to go back and take care of it. But that was all process, politics, all that to get to that point. And I'm sure during this process, there's somebody who's going to say, oh, you voted against the vets because you cut their retirement benefits. You know, but when I go and explain it to people and I get out and tell them what was going on and how we got in that situation, people, okay, now I get it. At least now it's fixed.
So the media doesn't explain it to you.
No, and that's why we try to do this, just so people understand what's going on and get as much information from DC to people. But it just is important to get information from people back to DC, because that's where the real communication should be going.
And in this case, it's a Senate bill. The House procedures are complex and convoluted. The Senate, they have a greater ability for individual senators to shape legislation in a way that's maybe non-germane. They're allowed to put non-germane amendments on the legislation much more freely. We have much more structured debate in the House. So we're not immune from having these type of problems, far from it, but the procedures of the Senate make it even more likely for a Senate bill to end up in that sort of goofy situation.
And you've been on this earth as long time as I have. You've seen what's happened with politicians. We elect politicians to represent us. We're not represented anymore. We're ruled no different than somebody over in a foreign country. We get a chance to vote on them, but in 4 years, they could do a hell of a lot of damage. And I don't have to mention the things. I'm talking about important things like Obamacare, this gun thing, or whatever. We elect people to represent us, not rule us. And we are ruled today, not represented anymore.
No, I appreciate it. I hear that frustration, and I hear it in more than one town hall. I hear it across the district. And one thing I can assure you is I'm trying to... every elected official or people running for office should go in front of people on a regular basis and say, let's talk. This is how I feel. This is where I'm coming down. Can't hide, can't run from your record, and have that conversation. And it's incumbent upon people. I mean, you came out on a Saturday afternoon. It means a lot to me that you took your time to come here and have this conversation. That's important. And the more we can do that, the more we can demand that accountability, the better off we are.
We get represented, but only in the town court like Naples.
And I just
Right, Mayor, right.
I was going to say this at the end, but this is our 130th town hall meeting.
Yeah.
A little bit of a
We keep moving. But yeah, we need more of that participation. We need more of that accountability. And the 24/7 news cycle sometimes is a problem because everyone's kind of, it gets people a little gun shy. They're real hesitant. I'm not one of those guys. I get out there. And the other thing about the 24/7 cycle that's a problem is got a lot of men and women who are in elected position use it for their 5 minutes of fame. They want to be on that headline. And I've been, well, would you come on the show? I've been on El Sharpton's show. I've been on these other shows, been asked to come. And we want you to say this and bash some people and things like that. And I'm like, and then on the Fox and all that stuff. Don't call me. I'm not going to do that. I'll talk about the issue. Tell you where we stand on the issue and why we think that's right and that's wrong, and we'll go from there. But that 24/7 news cycle is a problem to a degree. The other side of the coin that I think is making it better is, I will tell you, it's holding elected officials accountable, because it's all the information's out there. I mean, having the tape on us all the time, yeah, sometimes it can be uncomfortable and things like that, but there it is. It's there, and I respect that. I've been in town hall meetings where I'm having debates with people. I remember one of our first town hall meetings, getting up, educated on some issues. We were debating, I think it was a banking bill, if I remember correctly. A banking bill, or could have been a funding bill. But point is, we were talking about it, and all of a sudden in the back, the gentleman raises his hand. He said, well, no, but section 46 of the bill has this in it. And I'm like, oh, you're right. You're right, that does have it in it. And what he had done, they had their iPad. They're right there, pulling it up, holding me accountable to that. That forced me to know that when I go into the room, I got to know what I'm talking about and have the debate. And even if I don't, I learned from that debate that Section 46 was in that bill, and that made me in my opinion, made me a better representative, because I was held accountable and I learned from it. That's why we do this. So we should do that to everyone. Yeah.
What do you think is the most important industry in the Finger Lakes, hydrofracking or tourism?
I think the most important industry in the Finger Lakes is obviously of the two. I wouldn't limit it just to the two. I see a lot of opportunities.
But I asked just the two.
So But that's not a fair.
Which is first and
that's
which is
not a fair
second in
question.
your opinion?
No, I think
That's me.
obviously the tourism and the agricultural pursuits are the top priority between those two. But I think we can do both in the sense of develop the natural gas resource that we have here, do it safely and responsibly. But we have to do it in a way that you rectify the two. And that's why I have supported the exemption for the Finger Lakes region, because of the uniqueness of the economy, of the tourism industry, the winery industry that is here, that in my opinion, they have yet to show me a study that can show how those traffic patterns, those road patterns, can be built and developed in a way to mitigate and make them coexist. So I have supported that. A lot of people say, well, you support the exemption for the Finger Lakes. Well, then how can you do that if you're concerned about the contamination to the water and things like that? That's not where the support comes from. I've looked at the science, I've looked at the data. In my opinion, and I know we're going to have I can sense we're going to have a disagreement on this. Yeah, we're going to have a disagreement on this. Is that from a water aquifer point of view, that I think can be overcome and a solution implemented to make sure it's done safely and responsibly.
How and what's the time frame for that? How can you?
Well, I think the technology is already out there, and I mean the state taking 6 years to make a decision on it. To me, tells me there may be something else going on here than making a decision based on policy, science, and data. Maybe I would just suggest to you that politics is afoot in regards to this decision-making process. And also, look at what's going on. And regardless how you feel about it in New York, if you look around the country in North America, because I co-chair the U.S. Manufacturing Caucus on a bipartisan basis in Washington with Tim Ryan from Ohio. That's a bipartisan caucus. Also, the U.S. Natural Gas Caucus that I'm vice chair of, that I co-chair with Democratic members on. And looking across the nation, looking across North America, when you got states like California embracing natural gas development, when we're talking about Monterey Shale, Governor Brown out there welcoming to California. When I hear President Obama talking about it in a positive manner, saying it can be done and safely, responsibly, and they have supported the development of the natural gas resource we have here, to me, there seems to be a lot of folks growing in support of the development of the resource.
But you could very well be missing the people who have fallen off the fracking wagon, too. People who have decided that perhaps this isn't what we want. People in Pennsylvania who have had fracking come into their Wellsboro, for instance, was an ideal little village, beautifully set, and the people within that district now are very much appalled by the hydrofracking. So perhaps there are both sides of that issue, and I must say that driving through Pennsylvania does not give us the eclectic tourist destination when you go through the fracking districts.
Well,
And that's the problem. Naples is a very, well, your district is a very small one district in the full town of Naples. You have the village and east of Route 21. One of the things that is very interesting to the village of Naples is that we are now, this very day, celebrating 50 years of live theater in Naples.
Yeah, I've been to
that
it
not
many times.
everybody can say. And when you begin to see what could happen with hydrofracking, a lot of these tourism areas within our Finger Lakes region might fall by the wayside. And I would hate to see that happen.
well, and I appreciate it, and that's where we have been supportive of that exemption for the Finger Lakes. So I'm always going to come at problem. I try to solve problems. And I do not like being a country where we say, no, we can't. I like being a country where we say, yes, we can. So if there's a problem in regards to those coexisting, maybe there's a solution we can work together to find to implement it. Now, I will say, I drive back and forth every week. I go right down 15. I go right through the northern tier of Pennsylvania. And I'll tell you a little story. Hello, sir. I was at a town hall. It was up in Hector, if I remember correctly. Hector or Dryden. I can't remember either one of them. The Hector, right? Yeah. And I had a young lady who grew up in the northern section of the Route 6 corridor, if you would, from Mansfield over to Towanda, the other side of Wellsboro going the other way, to the east. And she said, you won't come to my family farm. You got to see how this has decimated my family farm. I said, I go. And I've done that Route 6 corridor numerous times. I've done it in an organized fashion. I've done it in an unorganized fashion, just on my own, to get out and talk to people at the gas stations and the dandy mini marts and all that stuff that are there, and have the conversation. I said, I'll go. And I went. And I showed up at her family farm, and I can tell you, her father met me, her mother was there, met me in their house. And he brought me in, he sat me down at the kitchen table, and he gave me a glass of water, first of all, from their well system, right there, you drink that. He goes, I gotta tell you, I know she's adamantly opposed to this. And I know that. But this well pad that they have developed on the back of their family farm, I'm using the royalties I get paid off of that to put her children through college. That sunk in.
Excuse me.
I mean, because at that point in time, I was thinking, okay, how can I'm trying to see how this interacts and how this connects to real people. That actually resonated with me because I was thinking, how many years have we spent in Washington, D.C., trillions of dollars of spending money on the war of poverty? And I'm a firm believer in education. Firm believer, that's the key to get out of poverty. Skill set training and education. And here you got a gentleman who's telling me he's using his farm to put the grandchildren's generation through college. Think how many generations that he's going to lift out of poverty as a result of that, on the use of that property. And he says, our property, it works fine. Yeah, there was an uptick in the, when it was being developed, the well pad and everything else. But once that's over, he says it's been relatively innocuous. So, I'm not coming here saying that this is without any concerns or anything like that. That's not what I'm saying. But if there's a problem, let's solve it.
Okay.
And let's go that path.
Just want to interject something. My understanding, I did some research on that, being in the water quality side of it, and I've been consulted to some gas companies on some things. And there have been approximately 50,000 wells hydrofracked in the United States, and fewer than 6 problems. That's a pretty low incidence. When you consider the amount of fuel tanks that are in the ground that leak, about 70% of every fuel tank that's been in the ground over 30 years gas into the ground. So the incidence of contamination
It's okay. Happy St. Patty's Day.
Yeah.
Sorry, Steve.
the incidence of contamination or problems with natural gas and hydrofracking is way lower than it is in conventional oil and gas. That's
The volume of evidence is beginning to say no. It's mounting.
Yeah,
Do I want to jeopardize the welfare of my kids and my grandkids for somebody else's pocketbook? No.
Well, and that's where we're always interested in the science and data, and we keep looking at reports and getting the data. I keep going to the EPA. I had an opportunity to talk to Lisa Jackson, the former head of the EPA, and said, look, off the record, tell me where I'm wrong. Tell me where hydraulic fracturing fluid has contaminated an aquifer. Can't tell you that. Hasn't.
Can't or won't?
Cannot say that. Now, there's been methane migration. That's why the casing of the pipe is so critical to get that done. But the hydraulic fracturing, the geology of it, the other instances of it, it's not there. And so that's something that resonates. Here you got the head of the EPA, Lisa Jackson, who's not known to be pro-natural gas and oil development interests,
Well,
being very candid and having that conversation with me.
again, being candid.
Yeah.
The people who generate the Gasland movies, all these others, are they lying? There's an awful lot of documentation.
Actually, yes.
You know what's interesting? I watched Gasland. Mr. Fox invited me to be on Gasland 2 and all that stuff. I said, well, with all due respect, we're not going to be able to, we're not going to see where this goes. And one of the things that was interesting, you know how they were lighting the faucet on fire?
I've seen that right here in Naples.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and it happens. As a kid, when I grew up in Corning, I mean, we had that all the time. Because we have shallow wells here.
Correct.
And if you're not on public water systems and you're coming off of a well system, you can play the game of lighting that on fire. That's a natural occurrence that occurs. But in the gas line, there was a scene where the gentleman said, once they came here, I knew there was a problem with the water system because then I could start smelling the natural gas. You know what's interesting about that comment? You can't smell natural gas. Natural gas is odorless. So to me, that was a red flag. Right when the rest of the movie, my mind, I'm like, oh, it's now a drama, not a documentary. And then the Gasland 2 came out, and
That was
whatever
endemic.
Mr. Fox, whatever his agenda is his agenda.
That was endemic.
But
He's been lighting that faucet for 30 years.
And so, I mean, we try to do the due diligence and try to get the data, and we try to making a point. And we're not going to agree on. There's clearly some disagreement here. Uh-oh, Doc. Doc, rope your chair, man.
Doc, watch that chair.
Uh-oh.
the bill.
I'm the bell.
By the way, don't sit in that one, Doc.
Great job, Doc. Way to do it.
260.
Did you hurt your neck? No, we're gonna.
268 and between.
Mike Robinson's coming over. Isn't he next door, right? You gonna run over here?
No, we wouldn't let him in.
Yeah, there you go. So, but I appreciate it, and that's where.
I have another
I'm not
question in that same train of thought.
And that's
You
where
mentioned accountability.
Yeah, please.
It becomes very disconcerting when we have issues and we see things that are being done illegally, not according to Hoyle, and everybody turns a blind eye to it and doesn't do anything about it. And we have no empowerment to combat it. A gentleman said earlier, operating by executive decree rather than following true form and function. We have no empowerment to counteract that. We rely on the people we elect, and it seems like nobody's listening.
Well, there's a specific circumstance. I mean, we'll carry whatever water. If there's something going on, we just had this conversation this morning in Lansing about some folks. Well, we need more regulation in order to make sure all the bad guys don't do the bad things. And I said, well, let me offer you a different point of view. Maybe what we should do is enforce the regulations we already have vigorously,
Such as writing law from the bench, executive order rather than going through Congress and Senate.
Amen.
We have no say. We rely on the people we elect
And we
to combat this.
And we keep putting a spotlight on it. We keep going after it. We've used the funding resources as a potential tool. The spotlight seems to be the most effective, just for practical purposes, putting a spotlight on the regulations coming out that are out of control, the executive orders. I mean, we just saw one go out where the penalty. A good friend of mine, Diane Black from Tennessee, sits next to me on the Ways and Means Committee. Found in some rulemaking proposals they had buried the individual penalty waiver that they were putting in there, burying it down. That stuff, you can't let that slip through. We gotta, if you see it, please make us aware of it. We'll put a spotlight on it, and we just got to keep pushing. But I will
If there
tell
are
you,
violations of law and function, why isn't it enforced?
yeah, this is where the president said something when he came up to that lunch that that I was talking about with the Republican conference. He came up to and talked to us. He said, "Elections have consequences," and that made sense to me. He won an election. He is there, and moving forward. Now, how do you hold him accountable in regards to those derelictions, the executive orders that are beyond statutory authority?
Impeachment.
That's where we go in and we put the spotlight on it and hold him accountable. And also, impeachment's a very serious situation, and I'm not advocating going down that path. Right. What we need to do is hold him accountable by way of the election process. And that's where 2014 is critical. 2016 is critical. 2014, I mean, if you can imagine, if you got one-party rule across the House, Senate, and the White House, with a president who has no concern about re-election, so the political ramifications are gone, to me, that is something that's problematic. And I'll tell you, I've talked with other guys on the other side of the aisle, and that is something they're also concerned about, is that this presidential overreach that's being established right now, they recognize that's one of our strongest arguments, I think, because as I said to some people, he's not going to be president forever. And you may get a president in there that you disagree with. And once that power has been established, be careful. And now they're quietly joining with us to say, Mr. President, you need to follow the rules.
Are we to the point where we can reconcile some of the damage that has already been done?
I just keep looking forward. I just keep looking forward. I mean, when you say reconcile, what do you mean?
Can't they dismiss executive orders with a new president? Couldn't they dismiss those executive actions?
Yeah.
Any president can, with the stroke of a pen, repeal any previous executive order.
Any previous executive order. So that's why elections have consequences, no doubt about it. And then you're going to have the whole judicial branch going to start to weigh in on this. We just had a constitutional law professor, John Thurley, from George Washington, come over, gave a little presentation to us. And he's a very strong Democratic member, very supportive of the Democratic Party. But even he came over and said, this executive authority, this disregarding of appropriations, reprogramming of money, this is a whole new level of presidential prerogative that we should all, Democrat and Republican, in the legislative side and on the judicial side, stand up and say, you're going down a path that's not good for the future of America. Yeah, ma'am.
Back to the local issue.
Local issue, please.
Hydrofracking.
Yeah.
Do you think that the chemicals that hydrofrackers use and their process are safe for life?
I think the chemicals, first of all, I think they should be disclosed. I support full disclosure of them. And I think most of the efforts, we've done a lot of work in the Natural Gas Caucus bringing this
Why
under
aren't
review.
they being disclosed?
Well, now they are.
Do you sit on the National Energy?
No, the Natural Gas Caucus.
Natural Gas
Natural Gas
Caucus.
Caucus, yeah,
Yeah.
which is bipartisan members come together to spotlight this issue and hold hearings and get information out. The whole purpose is to
So
bring
you have
information
an
out.
inkling of what those chemicals are.
Yeah,
Right.
no, there's some very
If those
toxic materials in.
Chemicals were not used in hydrofracking, would you be 100% for, given other variables were safe? If those chemicals were not used in hydrofracking, would you support hydrofracking in this part of New York State, the Finger Lakes? If all the other variables were proven safe,
Okay.
beyond a reasonable doubt. If those chemicals were proven safe
Okay.
to life, as we know it,
Okay.
humans, animals, plant, and so on, would you approve them?
Are you asking if Tom's supportive
Well,
of
I've been
exemption for Finger
supportive.
Lakes?
I've been supportive of the development of
You
natural gas.
approve them now? Chemicals.
Yeah, I approve the development of the natural gas resource, hydraulic frac. I think it can be done
Right.
safely,
You
responsibly,
approve
reasonable,
the use of those
regulatory.
chemicals?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
And those, the process uses pipes through aquifers, correct? I mean, basically.
Yep.
And do you agree that those casings and metals deteriorate over time?
The casings are, that's why it's critical to get those casings
Do you
cemented
agree
properly.
that they deteriorate over time?
Okay. Will they deteriorate over
Little
time?
shifts in the Earth's
Well,
crust,
there will always be
a lightning
decay.
strike?
There will
There's
always be a decay.
Right.
But,
So they do deteriorate over time?
but that's not, once the material is injected,
Yes, sir. They do
it's-
deteriorate over time.
yeah, but it's not like it's a straw that's continuously forever pumping out the material.
No, but they do deteriorate over time.
Okay.
You agree,
Okay.
right? Right?
Okay, yeah, I guess, yes. I feel like I'm being cross-examined, but, okay.
You are.
Okay,
And so once those deteriorate, then the chemicals that have been injected and are all not, 100% are not withdrawn from the earth, then those chemicals have a chance to spread
that-
to
that's where the science-
aquifer
yeah.
underlying.
yeah, that's where the science and data will establish that.
Well, I
that-
took eighth
that
grade
doesn't work.
science, sir.
Well, but
And I
think
know
about
some-
that, think about that.
Sir, I know some basic geology.
Okay,
Water seeks its own level and gravity and all kinds of changes in the Earth's crust over time.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes a while for these events to unfold. Over time, 70–80% of
So-
those wells will fail.
maybe if I could offer,
So therefore, as you sit on
Some
that
eighth grade?
committee,
okay,
as you sit on that committee, and don't you co-chair a House Committee on Energy?
natural gas.
Natural gas, that's the same committee.
Thank you.
I wish you would keep an open mind.
Sure.
Think
Well-
of the lives of your
So let's- let's-
great-grandchildren.
Let's talk
And the
about it.
responsibility that you have to safeguard in such, as other states have found out, Pennsylvania's found out, and others are fast finding out. This is a process that's fraught with problems.
Okay.
And we are a species that lives on water, 3 days without water. So as you project this forward a century, think of the problems. Thank you very much.
Okay. But if I could offer something to think about, and maybe for minds to take a look at this issue on. With the geology, we have fresh water on the surface, right? We have Lake Ontario, Lake Erie, Canandaigua Lake, Finger Lakes, Cuba Lake, and else. Also, under those bodies of water, we have brine water, right? We have salt water. We have tremendous amounts of resources that you have the clean aquifer, where the fresh water is, and usually within around here, the top 100 to 150 feet at the deepest. Where we're talking down 5,000, 6,000 feet and below, you have huge reserves of brine water that are down there. Has that brine water, since the glacier period, since the ice ages, has that contaminated the top fresh water of our Canandaigua Lake, Cuba Lake, Lake Erie, Lake Ontario?
Well, we could go on for this for
Well,
hours.
because the
I offer it as
I got
something
an A
considered, or
in science.
so yeah. But it's something to consider. If all this water is trying to get to the surface over the thousands, if not millions of years, why isn't that brine water on the surface?
I am not God.
The rock
I don't
structure
know
hasn't
that
been
that
broken.
isn't already happening.
We're operating with status.
Nobody
You
put
break
a
the
pipe
rocks,
down
you
it.
open it up.
So you think so? Okay.
The
So
fracking
that
is going
that
to-
straw is what the
fracking is going to change all of that.
Sure. And don't be too quick to believe
There's-
what the money makers are telling you.
There's always Love Canal.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. So I just offered something to consider, something to think about, and we'll make sure we do it safely and responsibly. Yeah, go ahead, man.
Does that mean they're going to
Until
cram
a
it
few
down
years
our
ago,
throats anyway?
I and my partner paid $8,000 out of pocket for health insurance.
Accountability? Sure.
And I know that the Congress has voted to get rid of Affordable Care Act many times. My question to you is, because $8,000 would bankrupt some people in our town, I mean, they $35,000 might be a yearly income. What do you propose to put in its place? You keep voting it down, and I know that it has imperfections, but what are you going to do for people that cannot even dream of paying $8,000 out of pocket?
I appreciate that. And I think there's some opportunity here for us because, well, first of all, I think when we talk about the Affordable Care Act, you've got to look at what this is. A lot of it deals with health insurance reform, okay? So I think if you repeal the whole thing, the first thing you do is you replace it with those health insurance reforms that we can find broad agreement on. The pre-existing condition situation, the 26-year-olds on parents' policies, those other provisions that are in the reform. So you immediately replace it with that. Then what you do is you move to the real heart of the issue, in my opinion, which I don't think the Affordable Care Act gets to, in my opinion, is that how are we going to contain these health care cost increases in America? Take health insurance aside. Now let's have the conversation about health care costs. So what are driving these costs up through the roof? I think a better way, rather than what we're seeing in the Affordable Care Act, is to institute things that use market pressure to bring down these costs by allowing the transactions to be much more transparent, have a utilization factor that puts individuals in a position where their financial health and their physical health are tied together, and you empower individuals and doctors, not bureaucrats and insurance carriers. So if you take those parameters going forward, I think there's something we can do in order to drive these costs down.
I'd love to see that on paper.
Yeah.
Could you tell me where to read that, please?
I'll give you, yeah, if you go to Tom Price, Dr. Tom Price has a tremendous amount of work on the Republican Party. He's a Republican member on the Ways and Means Committee, has a whole body of proposals and legislation on there. Steve Scalise, a Republican member from
One name's
Louisiana.
good.
Yeah.
Tom Price,
Yeah,
okay.
Steve Scalise, a Republican member from Louisiana, has done a lot of work in regards to those
Why
proposals.
can't you guys tweak what's there right now? You've got what you've got. Instead of just voting it down all the time, put some of this into action to make it better. Make what's there. Why just say no, wipe it out? Because you could tweak that and have some of these things that might improve it for a lot of people.
So I appreciate that, and that's an approach, but I think the problem that we have is that we don't repeal the whole law because of the unintended consequences. Remember the famous words, we had to pass it to figure out what's in it. That has set us down a course that is very problematic. And that if we repeal the whole thing, and then what we do is we have the honest debate and the open debate across the country, take the insurance reforms that we can agree on right now, that we see some benefits for.
Well,
we know
because
are
we'd
there.
be killed if you took those out now. I mean, if you took those out now, the whole country would go,
Right.
wait a minute, I like being able to change my job. It's very cool. I don't have my kid who has diabetes. It's okay. I can move still. Yeah, you're dead for that.
That's why I think we can find broad agreement in regards to that. And then we move forward from there. And then we get into the healthcare costs. And why don't we have a full, vigorous debate on the healthcare cost increases in America and how we're going to control that. And I'm not going to be one of these guys. There's some guys out there, and there's elected officials that are going to give you the 30-second sound bites to this complicated issue and say, okay, the way we're going to cure the healthcare problem in America is waste, fraud, and abuse and tort reform. Now, don't get me wrong. Those are part of the solution. Those are part of the solution, but they're not the solution. We need a whole new way to look at healthcare in America. I mean, I can offer you some things that are very much of interest to me. Things like hospice and palliative care, making that part of the conversation of America where we're not talking about, what can we do when someone is facing their end of life, as opposed to asking the question, why are we doing it? And I tell you, I've shared this story many a time. This is something I learned firsthand. When my mother passed from cancer, 9 months she was diagnosed, the day she died in my arms, I was the youngest of the 12. That was the guy who was going to my mother saying, Mom, we got to keep going. Yeah, the chemo didn't work the first time, but we're going to go to Sloan, we're going to go to Mayo, we're going to go to MD Anderson, we're going to live forever. She finally said, Tom, enough. And she said, I want to enjoy these last few months with you and Autumn, my daughter. And then I thought about it after we went through that experience, and I said, you know what? That's why I became a strong supporter, working with a guy, Earl Blumenauer from Oregon, on a bipartisan basis, where we're asking the question why and the quality that you get from it makes perfect sense
So
to me.
you don't mind death panels?
That kind of rhetoric from I hate
Because I
that.
agree with you completely.
I hate that.
But I don't want
hate
someone
that.
making that decision. That's your mother's decision
Exactly.
and your decision.
An informed decision.
Exactly.
And that's where it has to be, an informed decision. But it also, from a cultural perspective in America, we haven't gotten to the point. We're getting there, in my opinion. We're asking the why question as opposed to the what can we do. I mean, I talk to doctors all the time. They're always confronted in their offices. No one ever asks me why. They always ask me what. And that's where we got to change the situation. But yeah, when I hear the rhetoric coming out of guys on our side looking for those 5 seconds of fame on the show and whatever, saying these are that's frustrating. That's not productive. And have the honest conversation of what we're talking about. Because when you look at it, like in my mom's situation, think of the money that was saved.
The gross national product rises every time somebody gets bad cancer.
Yeah. So.
I got a date, at my age, I can't afford to
Hey! God bless you. Well, that you can't top that.
Thanks for coming.
Sounds good to me.
Hey man, sounds good.
You got one now too?
At 4:30.
So you got one now? No. I want to go talk
To
to
follow up on the accountability issue, which is important to me, I spend a lot of time every day on that. The federal government has become the dominant entity in everyone's life in this country. A very strong case can be made that the only growth economy is in the federal government. It's very sad. There's a very simple solution. Real solutions usually are simple. It's to restore the 10th Amendment.
damn cramps.
The 10th Amendment, even though we live in a state that is less than conservative, is still the answer for the country.
The cure was
Because
worse
we
than the
have
disease.
a
The cure
federalist
was worse
system
than the
that
disease.
supposedly has checks and balances, and they're completely out of whack. We can debate and disagree on specific issues, but the point is, when it comes to the most important factors, who is going to live our lives? These ladies right here have different positions than I do on certain things, but they have every right to make the decision the way they want to. And none of us have that decision because, like this gentleman said, who's accountable? Nobody listens. You listen, they give you a lot of credit for that. But I know what you're up against. I've been around in D.C. as a lobbyist back in my younger days. The point is, the system doesn't work any longer. And until we admit that and come up with some real solutions and start bringing the real power back to the states and to put shackles on the federal bureaucracy, which is really running the country more than elected officials, any way you cut it. I mean, these decisions out of EPA are just insane. They're crazy people there. And they have to stop. And if Congress doesn't show the leadership to cut the funding, which I understand why, because of the political issues involved, they get a lot of bad press. What's the recourse for the rest of us? The next election? When you can't ever really nominate a true solution person? You're nominating people who none of us want to vote for to begin with.
The frustration I hear, and I share the frustration. And I went there to do something, and I'm going to continue to do something. I want to be part of the solution. And your 10th Amendment proposal, I'm a big believer in the 10th Amendment. I believe the closer the government is to the people, and the people themselves know better than somebody in Washington, D.C. and everything else. So, Connor, do you know what the 10th Amendment is? I'm going to put you on the spot, Connor. Nope. There you go. My pocket constitution that we carry with us. 10th Amendment is a restriction on the federal government that what is not in the Constitution is retained by the states and by the individuals. And so there's a copy of the Constitution. You ever read the Constitution, Connor?
I have.
Yeah. So it's 16 pages in that book. Very good document to look and know by heart. But the 10th Amendment is something that I think that needs to be Steve.
To piggyback on that, what you were saying about the states getting back their power, and interesting things going on right now with that guy in Wyoming. We had all the permits to create a stock pond on his property. He's now being fined $75,000 a day by the EPA. I don't know if you've heard about that. It was fairly recently.
Wyoming, New York, or Wyoming.
Yeah, he put a large stock pond in, and he dammed a small little creek, which he had the permits to do. And the EPA is coming in and saying, okay, you've got to restore it back to the way it was, you've got to do this, you've got to do that, and then meanwhile we're going to fine you $75,000 a day. And they deferred to the state, and the state said he's got all the permits. He's done everything right.
Well, and that's one thing that you'll find in me, is I'm a believer in the 10th Amendment. I am not an individual, however, that says there are no regulations, that type of environment. I think the regulations at the local level. How are you, officer? Connor, he's right here. He's right here. I've been holding him all the time. Uh-oh.
I'm parked in the wrong spot, all right.
Check the station.
There you go. State troopers here. How are you? Good to see you.
You doing a
town hall meeting?
Oh, yeah.
Town hall meeting. Anything from the state troopers?
No, I'm out at the Farmington station with the sergeant over there. So.
Well, we appreciate everything you do. You be safe out there.
Yeah, thanks. I'll be in the office.
Yeah. Anything you need.
Let's come out to save that.
He just slipped in the door. But the regulations, there's a lot of duplication of regulations, the local statement. I'm a firm believer, if you're going to have the regulation, do it once, do it as consistent. We did a lot of work in regards to the transportation bill in regards to that duplication, because there's a ton of money being spent, in my opinion, in complying with those duplicative requirements at the federal, local, state level that you can streamline and do under one. And they take NEPA and SECRA, for example. There's a lot I think you can do to coordinate the two environmental reviews, where essentially, why not have, and this was the big issue that we were facing there, if you're going to have a process of environmental review done by NEPA, why doesn't NEPA recognize what SECRA has done at the state, or vice versa? You know, at the state level, you're going to have something that, just accept the one review. They have to start all over and have a whole new study and consultants start from square one. So anyway, we can go on and on and on, but reasonableness when it comes to regulations is something we're very important.
Good. One last question, I think the mayor has to get to his debate.
Yeah, we got a big debate. We're all going over to fire trucks.
I've got a date with Don, so if he doesn't go and I don't go, everybody else will.
Oh, there you go, right there. Thank you.
Oh, all right.
Well, it just as before we get to the last question, I promise you we'll get to the last question. Is there anything on the local level that and that's why one of the reasons we do this is really to hear if there's anything we can do, reach out to us. We want to be helping.
Well, Congressman, you covered it. One of the biggest issues or concerns on the local level is the issue of hydrofracking, and I think especially here, this community, at the very least, would like assurances that A, their right to prohibit through land use is supported and protected, and I know that's more of a state thing. I get that. And I think it was important that you explained your position on that activity is obvious. However, supporting the exemption of the Finger Lakes is also equally important, because that recognizes the socioeconomic impact. Something we fail to talk about, unfortunately, and it drives me insane. If there's an impact to be really thought about, the immediate impact is socioeconomic. That's why it doesn't fit here. And I think we need to talk about that more. But, thank you.
I agree with you. All right, last question.
To end this on a positive note.
Yeah.
You've taken a grilling tonight, or this afternoon. Wife and I got a phone call last week. That call was so nauseating in its outright attack on you My wife took one guy's ear off, I took the other one off, and I stuffed them where the sun don't shine. So in that, I supported you.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That's all part of the process. We know who we are, and we just keep getting out there, and I appreciate that. So with that,
Can I have a half a minute?
sure. Yep, we'll have a conversation here. Thank you, everybody. Enjoy the rest.